Hello there and welcome back to my YouTube channel and to today's video all about how to pass your upcoming taxation examination. That's the F6 ACCA paper, also known as. If this is the first time you've ever clicked on one of my videos, hello, my name is James, I'm an ACCA qualified member from the UK, and on my channel I help out accounting students and ACCA students around the world pass their examinations. So if that is of interest to you, be sure to subscribe and hit the button below so that you get access to all of my free resources. And as well, if you're new here, you won't realise that all my videos are dedicated to my lovely subscribers. And as you can see around me on here, I've got a lovely message from Ria on there asking, James, your videos really helped me. Ria, fantastic, you're an absolute superstar. But Ria's asked kindly about producing a how to pass video for taxation. And the F2 Gamer has been writing for the tax papers 4 times now, all getting in the 40s. Well, trust me guys, if you follow these tips in the video, they apply to whichever tax paper that you are sitting, whether that's from Botswana to the Singapore paper to the UK paper, whichever it may be. This is all going to cover it in the video. I've got 3 top tips for you. I've left the actual timings in the description below, but if you wait until the end of the video, get your pen and paper at the ready, it's definitely going to help you. So make sure you give the video a massive like. Let me know in the comments below what you actually thought of it. Subscribe, as I said, and feel free to send this over to any study buddies because it could be the difference just getting them from the 40s into the 50 plus and to pass. As I did touch on, this is a video that applies from all of the versions of the tax paper, and this can be from, and I'll put it up in the screen up here, from Botswana to Zimbabwe. So as you can see the list on there, I bet you didn't realise there were that many of tax papers, but don't worry, you've only got to do one of them. And the tips in the video apply for the computer-based examination, so wherever you're based in the world, if you are doing the paper-based exam, you can adjust the timings accordingly, but make sure you check on ACCA's website for one, and your MyACCA or your usual login account as well. They will be the main things on there. But to get the ball rolling there, first of all, first tip we've got to talk about is your exam time strategy on there. So for anyone who is completely new to the tax exam, you've got 3 hours, which is 180 minutes, and 10 minutes of reading time to go through the instructions before you hit that start button in the computer-based exam to go. So hence, a sort of rough guide for you is 180 minutes, you've got 100 marks on the test, so that's 1.8 minutes per mark. In the tax exam, you've got 3 sections, A, B and C. In section A, you've got 15 objective test questions, each 2 marks each. So that's 30 marks, and that will equate to 54 minutes in your exam, if you want to get these jotted down. Secondly, in section B, you've got 3 case-style questions on there. You've got 5 questions in each case, all 2 marks each. So the total is 30 marks in section B. So again, multiplied by 1.8 gives you 54 minutes. And then section C finally has 3 questions in there, 1 that is 10 marks, and then we've got 2 on there which are constructive response questions, and they are 15 marks each. So in other words, for section C, you've got 40 marks, which is the equivalent to 72 minutes in your exam. Just as a sort of nice, easy frame to sort of get you going for rough timings on there. But I hear you say, hang on James, that's all very predictable, but what would you do if you were in my situation? Have no fear, don't worry. This is where, well, this is the actual timing that I'd look to implement, but it does come with a caveat as to it's going to require lots of question practice before your examination. Just as a sort of side note as to, it could be very tough, but I'm going to walk and talk you through why it is possible and what are the benefits of doing it this way. So here's the breakdown up here as to what the actual process is, okay? So first of all, I'd start off by actually spending 30 minutes on section A, fully focused, full of energy, start my examination. I'll be flagging questions on the computer-based system if I didn't really know them, but as a general sort of starting point, you've got 2 minutes per question, you've got 15 of them on there, and it keeps the timing on the clock in the exam to be really easy. So the first half an hour in, 30 minutes, section A, go through them, flag any questions on there. Then what I want you to do, or what I'd be doing, is definitely then moving on to section B. And remember, we've got 3 questions on there, 10 marks each, 5 2-mark questions. And what that means is, well, I'm going to give myself half an hour now to actually go through section B. Or in other words, really easy to keep track of. The first question in section B, 10 minutes there. The second question, 10 minutes there. And then the third question, 10 minutes there. And I get where you're coming from, but James, hang on. You said at the start we've got 54 minutes for section B and for section A, and you've only allocated half an hour. So where's this 24 minutes gone? Don't worry, I've got you. It's all in the bag. But you've got to remember, imagine if you were actually implementing this into the exam, you would be now an hour in. You've gone through section A, you've gone through section B, and now you're an hour in, and I want you to move on to section C. And the timings as well make it really easy to follow. And at this point in the exam, I want you to spend 1 hour going through section C, which in my eyes is actually the hardest part of this exam. So you need energy to focus in on it. So after you've had your 1 hour going through section C, you'd be at that point in the actual examination that you're 2 hours in now out of your 3. You've been through all 3 sections and you've got an hour left. And this is where the actual question practice, doing questions to time, really comes to your advantage. So now, as we're moving from the 2 hour slot into the final hour, I'd have a deep breath, bit of water, clear my mind, and what I'd do there is move back to section A for 50 minutes. So again, really easy to follow on the actual clock. Make sure you've got all of your answers ticked off, so any of those that you've flagged, because you won't be coming back to section A again. This is so that we've actually pinched 9 minutes from section A. So at the start I said you'd have 54 minutes. We're only going to allocate 45. So this is because, in my eyes, section A is the slightly easier area of the actual examination, but do not overlook it, because the 15 minutes extra at the end gives you the chance, again, 1 minute per question, to read through it, ask yourself, and really be thorough to say, I have made mistakes in here, and you will have made mistakes. Go through those requirements meticulously, and you will pick up on mistakes, reselect them, and then make sure all of them are selected before you then go back onto section B is the next thing on here. So what do I mean by this? Well, we've now got 45 minutes left in the examination at this point, and I'd be looking to spend about 20 odd minutes here reviewing your work. Again, the same process of attempting the flag questions. Section A and section B are all multiple choice. So in other words, if you get it wrong, you get it wrong. This is where it's really key that we're reviewing our answers, checking them through, and actually questioning to yourself to say, why is this correct? Why are the other answers incorrect on there? And this is where you'll help to pick up on those easy marks, because you will have made a mistake. When you're coming back to review in the final hour, you've got to go in with the mindset of, I've made mistakes here, and it's my job to find them so that I get into the actual 50+ mark that is going to help me pass this exam. So this is where you've got to be really careful on the format, the layout, the decimals, the units, especially in section A and section B. It's marked by the computer, and if you get it wrong or don't follow the instructions, you're not going to get the marks for it. So be really meticulous. The more question practice you do, the better. So that will leave us now with 25 minutes pushback finally for section C, and this is where you go through those final requirements. This is where you're going to have to dig deep to get those last bits of energy in. And what I need you to do here is, and what I'd be implementing is, getting down as much narrative, because you will be asked to explain your calculations, and showing all of your workings as much as possible, considering all of the available areas that you're being tested on in the requirement. Later on into the video, I'm going to tell you what the external examiner tells us is going to come up in section C, so make sure you hang around to the exam tips and hacks at the end. Just a final point here is that section C is marked by a person, so you've got to show as many workings as possible right up to the last second, because that little bit could be the difference in pushing you into the 50 plus on there. Okay, and I will admit this is a tough approach, but it's designed so you get the opportunity, as we touched on before, to actually review your answers, pick up on those silly mistakes, and it also nudges you to actually complete all 100 marks. The external examiner continually tells us in the external examiner reports that students fail to actually complete all 100 marks. So they're trying to get a 50 mark plus to pass the exam, but they've only done 80 marks or 90 marks. That is not the right way to pass this exam, but if you follow this exam time strategy, as you can see at the top here, then you're on to a winner. So that is tip number 1, my exam time strategy for your tax exam. Follow that, and I think you've got a real good chance of passing, as long as you do the question practice before the exam. Now, coming on to tip number 2 now, and this is the actual ACCA Tax Syllabus Insights. And this is where It's really going to be helpful to break it all down for you, so it's going to settle any nerves, whether you're completely new to tax or maybe you're watching this the night before the exam. But firstly, very, very important for the tax exam, when you sit the exam, this is first of all really key. So maybe if you're planning in the future, this will really help you. In the UK, for example, June is the first sitting of the tax exam with the new rules and new regulations and allowances, whereas March is the last one. So say, for example, it's June 2021, okay? And the exam sittings we have are June, September, December, and then March. What could happen is if you sat in March for the first time in one tax year, then you actually potentially failed it. If you were to resit in June, then that could be where, oh my gosh, you've got different rates and different allowances. You're going to have to buy new books for as well. And this is where it could be a real annoyance for you, I would say. So really select when you're actually going to sit the tax exam and actually share that information. Check it for your examination that you've got to sit on there. But be careful if you were to fail, and then what rates and allowances you would have to apply. And be careful when you're actually selecting the right books. Right, one of the other main reasons why ACCA students fail this exam is they try to question spot. Now, there are a couple of questions that you can expect to see on this exam, but this is where you could be tested on absolutely anything and everything from the actual syllabus. The fundamentals of the actual syllabus you need to be comfortable with, and what I've done for you is I've broken it down for you up here, A to F. These are the key syllabus areas, and I've also done a video on this on my channel, so make sure you put that down in your notes to check it out. I'll walk and talk you through all of the key areas from the tax system, income tax, gains, inheritance tax, corporation tax, value-added tax on there, and then getting comfortable with the computer-based system. But this is where, check out the other videos on the channel. It's definitely going to help you out, and I share my insights of the areas which are more likely to be tested. But maybe you're sat there now watching this and potentially you've actually failed tax before. What would I be recommending for you to do just to get the ball rolling again? Well, the first thing is to actually have a look on ACCA's website, and again, I've got a video on the channel explaining all the free resources that you can access. Have a look at the technical articles, just see what are the most up-to-date ones that you need to be aware of. And coming back to those A to F that we've got on the screen here, I would have a folder for each category, or a sheet of revision paper, or whatever folder system, whatever organisation you have, break it up, and then when you're going through question practice or going through something in the syllabus that you didn't understand, maybe about income tax, this is your income tax sheet, we'll just write it down under there. So that the night before the exam, you're going to have 7 different sheets, income tax, corporation tax, whichever one it may be, and that is definitely going to help you out. So it's all consolidated, shall I say, in one area. Highly, highly, highly recommended that you do that. The next thing is, if you failed it before or you're looking for a different sort of revision strategy on it, is actually try to picture what is actually going on in the requirement and question the actual scenario that you're actually dealing with. So ask yourself, am I dealing with an individual or a company? Can I actually relate it maybe to the company I work at so that I can better picture how it would be implemented? And then going through all of the requirements, say, is that correct? What rate should apply to that? Which band of tax does this person fall into? And it's this questioning mentality is another really good skill, along with applying it to different working scenarios that could help you out just to understand those requirements better, because the external examiner mentions it all the time in their external examiner's reports that students get confused with the questions, especially on Section C. Just to reiterate again, Sections A and B can test absolutely anything on the syllabus. Whereas the examiner states in the report, that's their external examiner's report where they all get together, they actually disclose in there that in Section C, for those two 15-part questions, you can expect to see an income tax question and a corporation tax question on there. And this is where you've got to calculate and interpret. So this is where you've been warned by the external examiner. If you can't do, going into this exam, an income tax calculation and a corporation tax calculation on there, you're going to be at a severe disadvantage. I have linked in the description all of the actual relative up-to-date and relevant study texts, question practice, flip notes as well that I'd recommend to pass. So if you want to check them out, all the links are down below. The ball's in your court, but those would be the resources that will help you out, especially with those computations. I'd also have on there some actual pro formas, which we're going to talk about in a moment on here. But overall, those are my ACCA tax syllabus insights for tip number 2 on that. I know, plenty to go through, isn't that? But finally, and last but not least on here, we're going to be talking about James's tax hacks and exam tips now. And this is where I've put down absolutely everything that came to my mind in a massive knowledge dump on here, clear and concise, so that you get the most amount of value. So pen and paper at the ready as we go through them one by one. So in other words, I sat down and thought, from my experience, where are the common mistakes, and how do ACCA students who sit the tax exam put themselves at a disadvantage, basically? Well, first of all, we actually have the actual tax tables, which has all the allowances, rules, percentages and thresholds in there. These are actually provided to you in the examination, but it just staggers me how many students are not comfortable with these before they go into the examination. There are really 2 types of sort of levels that I would have of a student going into this, as to the first person, or first student shall I say, knows that they are there. They've maybe done a few question practice on them, but in the exam they're going to have to be referring back to them and then coming back on and clicking on and off, which is going to waste time as you go through and really actually sort of hamper your calculations, then maybe going back to explaining. What a well-prepared student will get really, really good at is remembering the rates, remembering the thresholds as to why it applies to a certain type of individual or company beforehand. So you want to be at that stage, but it can only come with question practice, making mistakes, reviewing your answers and getting those notes written down. So that is the first key area that you need to be comfortable with, and attempting question practice on all of those rates, allowances, absolutely everything. Next, key thing to get written down are the actual metrics, the units in the examination that you will have to talk about. This is where you've got to pay particular attention in section A and section B. They're marked by the computer, and if you get it wrong, you've got it wrong on that. So the wrong format, the computer will pick it up and go, nope, not followed the actual format described in the actual question requirements, so you're not going to get the marks from me, I'm afraid. This is where decimals are one thing you need to be aware of, specific numbers, converting units, potential currency on there, but the classic ones are always the nearest whole number and percentages as well. So just to get those noted down, and then when you're doing question practice as you go through, you'll start to pick up on it more and you won't make as many mistakes. But if you do, say on an income tax calculation, write down where you went wrong in the calculation, maybe use the wrong rates or put too many zeros on it, put it on those revision checklist sheets and you'll be fine on there. What we mustn't also do is actually overlook section C, because the examining team for ACCA consistently tell us that they're in the reports that students don't actually answer all of the requirements here. They fail to show enough workings, first thing to get down, and enough narrative explaining and relating it back to the scenario, what they've worked out. Because usually it's calculate the income tax calculation and then tell us why or how could the individual be benefited from this. This is marked manually, so working marks, carried forward marks all apply, and you don't want to miss out on this. And the real key thing here is that even if you get a figure completely wrong compared to what they have in the mark scheme, but you've interpreted it correctly, so you've maybe got that they have a tax liability of £20,000, but in actual fact the real answer was a rebate of £10, well, if you've actually talked about it correctly from what you've been given, you will get some marks for that, okay, because you're actually talking about it correctly from what you've interpreted. Finally, the next thing we have to talk about, especially for linking to section C, should I say, is you've got to be comfortable with all the functions of the computer-based platform. So that's the layout, the calculations, and especially for section C, you've got the Excel and then also the worksheet on there. So the more practice you do, the better off you're going to be. You're not going to be wasting time in the exam trying to operate it. I'd do as many as possible. If you log on to ACCA and have a look again through the actual free resources video, I'll pop it up here for you so you can see and link it down below. It's all on there for you, and it just walks and talks you through how you can go through it, but the more question practice you have, the better. As I said, I've got free videos walk or talk you through, just pop those on there, have it on in the background, take some notes down, and then go and apply it. That will be the key thing to get you through and could easily make up 5 to 10 marks and time in your exam. Right, so now it got me thinking in my notes. I thought, what are the sort of final nuggets of tax gold that I could get to you that could just be that little nudge, as we talked about at the start? I mean, 3 marks in the 40s, that could be that 50 plus, whatever it may be, in the examination. Well, let's go through it then. That yes, we've talked about covering all the syllabus on here, but this is another thing in the tax exam that they won't really tell you much, and I don't really see much of it online. But if I was going into the tax exam, and I've seen how thick the book that you've got in front of you is that I'd expect to see elements in this exam that I wouldn't actually know about, or I didn't quite know the up-to-date things on it, because there are so many rules and regulations and the syllabus is so vast on here. And you may actually get a question that's maybe worded a bit funny, or it has an issue maybe with a cut-off in terms of the date or something really specific. And when you're under the exam pressure, it's a case of when you're trying to digest all this information and work out, is it an individual taxpayer, have we got a gain, what reliefs, allowances, these are all the questions that you need to be thinking about in your exam. It's a case of sometimes you just got to use your own professional judgment. Don't panic, and especially for sections A and B where you've got all those different options on there, just break it down on there. And as I said, for section A, read the questions through with the requirements, try to pick up on what they're called distractors or sort of outlier answers that you look at it and go, that quite simply can't be right on that. There is no chance. Well, then we're narrowing it down from maybe 4 answers to 3, 2, or even finding the right one. Use your professional judgment. Eliminate answers which, as we said, just are complete no-goes on there. And in order to pass this exam, you've got to be doing as many questions to time, just like the real examination, following the time strategy through. So reviewing your answers on there, asking yourself where you went wrong, and then writing down in your notes where it's referenced from as well. So it's easy to find, all in one area. And to sort of mix up the actual revision strategies, I would say section A, you could quite easily walk and talk it through, reading it out aloud, selecting your answer, and really varying it up. Versus for section C, you've got to really focus down on it and say to yourself, right, workings, pro formas, working it through. And that would be where I'd be saying work in silence. Versus section A, I think you actually walk and talk it through, or you could get maybe someone else to test you on it as well. Just to mix it up, because you think to yourself, oh, I've got a 4 or 5 hour session of tax to do tonight after work. Probably sat down in silence going through all the questions isn't the most ideal. Now, coming on to sections B and C, I would highly recommend you do these to time on there. So that 1.8 minutes per mark. And for the 10 mark questions in section B that we touched on, you've got 80 minutes. Obviously, when we said it in the earlier bit, you're going to cut it down. But if you want to do them to bang on time, I've done a study with me video as well. So if you want to check that out, I know loads of students that use this and it's helped them to pass. Pop it on, 80 minutes, it holds you accountable. Really good way to get the work done on there as well. Section B, I tend to find, is actually all about really understanding the details. So it's a lot more detailed than section A, not misinterpreting what they are actually trying to get you to answer, and silly mistakes, I'll be honest. It's marked by the computer. You can just misread something. So it's just getting as many questions done as possible to time, and then focusing in on those keywords. Sections A and sections B, look for the buzzwords, look for the things that stand out, and look for asking yourself to say, which area of the syllabus is this referring to? And then I'm going to focus and home in on that to get the mark for me. Now, coming on to section C for the final things of nuggets of information on here, what would I be implementing? Well, first of all, I'm automatically saying to myself, this is the most difficult area of the exam. So my mindset from my old student days is I'm looking for the easy marks strategy straight away. So except yes, okay, when we're going to come on to the scenario and relating all the figures, brilliant on there. But sometimes in section C, when you're actually reviewing the scenario and requirements, check for anything in bold, okay? These are the key points that the marker really wants to highlight to you and to pick up on. and can refer to specific requirements or a specific area in there. The other thing is they sometimes give you data, tables, graphs, and this can be applied to a specific requirement. And you've got to say to yourself, if they've given me, and they'll sometimes write it, this relates to part C of the requirement. If they've given you those things on there, they want you to use it. That's another fundamental thing. When you're actually reading through the requirement to actually work out what they want you to answer, ask yourself, is this relating directly back to the scenario, first thing, or is it secondly a general tax point where I may have to demonstrate some information? If it's demonstrating information, I've just read it through and I don't know if it could relate to the scenario, probably not. Well, I'm going to get down my knowledge first of all, pop in a couple of paragraphs down there, well, paragraphs, I'd say, a couple of sentences, leave a gap, and then a couple of sentences there. What that means is when in a marker situation, they see the first two sentences and say, can I allocate a mark there, yes or no? Next bit, can I allocate a mark there, yes or no? And then when you go back to the scenario, you've got a bit at the end there that you can add in absolutely anything else that relates back. It's a really good tactic for narrative questions, so that you're trying to squeeze out as many marks as possible using the scenario and using your knowledge to the advantage on that. As we touched on earlier, make sure you've got it written down because this is fundamental. Section C, we know that they're going to have income tax and corporation tax in there. So what you need to do is create pro formas in your revision to cover all possibilities that could be tested there. So in other words, what you're saying to yourself is, I've got to be doing these in Excel. So I'm going to do a pro forma on Excel, and maybe I might want to write it down, pen and paper as well, so that if I can do it in Excel now, I can do it in Excel on the computer-based format. So for example on that, if in the income tax computation, I'd have all the potential incomes up there, all the potential allowances on the syllabus, any other charitable donations, anything from any other question I've done in my revision, put onto that spreadsheet, and then with any other notes about potentially when the tax was due to be paid, do we have any payments on account, are there any reductions, all these little things that will add up on there, so that on your one pro forma, you've got on there basically absolutely everything that could be tested, so that when you get that question, you know how to handle it straight away. Go to that pro forma and then start from top to bottom. Would highly recommend that for both the corporation tax and income tax questions on there. And breathe. That is tip number 3. Changes, tax hacks and exam tips on there. I know there's a lot to go through, but I hope you've got lots of notes down for that. And I really hope you've enjoyed the video. So make sure you give it a massive like and thumbs up below. I really appreciate all the support for the channel. I'm so glad that the videos in the lovely office go down such a treat. So be sure to subscribe below so you get access to all my free videos and uploads that I put on in the future. And if you've got any requests or let me know what you thought of the video, be sure to leave me a comment below and share the video with any study buddies or friends that, you know, just these little nuggets of information could be the difference on there just to help them through really. And I'm so pleased that the videos are helping students like yourself pass your examinations. Well, the final thing I can say is best of luck on your accounting journey and for your tax exam. I hope the new videos and all my expertise and insights helps you out. I've got plenty of more resources on the channel, and what I've done for you is I've left a couple at the end here. Click one of them, they're definitely going to help and could be that extra thing that could build on those marks to get you the pass for your next exam. But as always on that bombshell, I'll see you next time. Cheers!